Hello and welcome. Those of you watching the replay, hello, because you may see this. I am here in very, very, very snowy Nova Scotia. I spent 2.5 hours shoveling snow this morning, so we had quite a storm yesterday. So those of you who do not know me yet, I am Dawn Smith and president of Brave Writer. I was director of publishing for many, many years, so I am intimately just like the details of all of the dart, the arrow, the boomerang. They have been my babies, the slingshot. For many years, I selected the books and have worked on all of these literature guides that we use for many years. So I decided to come up with this plan to help you plan, a plan to help you plan. And we have been doing them for a little while with people that are in Brave Learner Home and people who are have purchased the year-long programs. And this time I decided to open it up for everyone to come on in and participate in a planning jam session. What it is basically I'm going to walk you through a dart. You can use any guide. You can use a dart, an arrow, a boomerang, a slingshot, whatever you happen to be planning for next month. This session will guide you through kind of the steps, and then you can apply it to whichever guide you're using. And then also, if you want to integrate a writing program, I'll pull in one from partnership writing to match up with the dart. But if you are doing building confidence, or if your teen is writing some essays and you're trying to come up with some essay topics, this is the time to plan that. And then also pull in some pieces from Growing Brave Writers. So those are the three pieces of the program: mechanics and literature, project products, or projects for writing, original writing, and then Growing Brave Writers, which pulls in all the practices that we use to help kids get the words on the page and revise and edit and all the good stuff. I have had some requests for quill planning, but I haven't done a quill session yet. It's very different from the dart, arrow, and boomerang, but don't let that deter you. You can still go through the quill and kind of plan alongside us while we're doing this today. Each quill area has a little planning guide. So each activity in the quill has a little planning guide that you can follow. So you can just follow along if you're doing the quill. Let's get started. I'm going to screen share because that seems to be the easiest way to help you visualize where I'm talking about in the guides and what we're doing. So I'm going to use the Heartwood Hotel dart. That is the dart that will be releasing in March, on March 1st. Some of you should already have access to it. If you have the year-long program, you get access on the 15th of the month before it releases as a literature single. So on the 1st of March, this will be a literature single dart. On the 1st of March, this will be the literature single arrow. So it is called The Secret of Honey Cakes. It's a phenomenal book, historical fiction. And then Scythe is the boomerang that will be a literature single in March. Yes, Heartwood Hotel is amazing. So we have darts for all three books. There are 4 books. So this is so we have number 1, 2, and then 3. But you do not have to have read the first 2 to get this. Authors are amazing right now, where they're writing series where you can just jump in anytime. They give you just enough background knowledge in a series book so that you can kind of jump in, read the one, and then go back and read the previous ones if you really want to. Okay, so let me screen share and we can get started. So on the cover of Dart, Arrow, Boomerang, Slingshot, when I say dart during this session, you can just apply it to Dart, Arrow, Boomerang, Slingshot, so then I don't have to say them all every time. So on the cover, you'll find information, basically a table of contents, tells you where you can get to all of the different sections, and also what the literary device is if you're doing a dart or arrow. Then the next page is a quick start guide. And the quick start guide is basically just telling you, please go find the guidelines. If you haven't looked at the guidelines, they are a separate PDF that come with your mechanics and literature guide. And so the guidelines are a really great place to start if you are just doing your first one, you're not familiar with copywork or dictation or any of those things. The guidelines are definitely your place to go. The other thing I want to show you in the guidelines, because this pertains to planning, I'm going to switch over to the DART guidelines here. I'm going to flip down to page 13 in the guidelines. This page shows the sample routines that you can do. So we get people asking all the time, do I do it 3 days a week, 4 days a week, 5 days a week, all kinds of stuff like that. This right here shows different ways that you can go about using the DART. So it's like for this one, it has you doing something, 5 days a week. This other one, it has a take a break day. So that means like that could be the day that you have forest school or you go to co-op or some other thing is happening that day, or you want to spend that day focusing on science experiments. So you're not doing language arts that day. Whatever it might be, there are some options here that you have for how you want to structure your time. And then there are also lots of other things in the guidelines that are going to help you. I'm going to talk about this idea of stuff to ask any passage, like asking the passage or interviewing the passage and engaging with your kids about the passage when we come to the what to note section. You can find out more about that here on page 11 in the DART guidelines. It might be a different page in the Arrow or Boomerang guidelines, but it's still there. Okay, so let's switch back over to the DART. This suggested reading guide is really helpful for kind of keeping track of where you are so that when you are doing your read aloud, you can see that you've read past a passage before you come to the weekly content. So what I like to do is take and mark in a book. You can see these little markers here, and they are where I need to read past to get to the guideline section. The other thing that people do is that you can just mark the passage. So one way that you can do that is you can skip back. So in every DART, at the end, I'll just go to the very end and scroll back up again. There are passage pages at the back. So you can just go here to week 1. That passage is on page 1. So take your marker. You can do this right now if you have your book you're using for March and put a tab on 1. And then you go to passage 2, that's page 44 and 45. You can go to those pages and mark the page where the passage is. This way, when you're reading aloud, you've gotten to the passage that you're going to study and read just beyond it. So when you're reading passage 2 and you're doing the things in passage 2 that week, you've read past it. There aren't going to be any spoilers. Your kids understand the passage in the context of the story. So all of those things come into play. All right. So take this time. You can mark your reading passages that you want to do either through the suggested reading guide or on the passage pages. You can use those to mark in your book. So when you're doing your read aloud, you're all set. The other thing that people do is they take the Big Juicy questions, which are on page 37, and they'll take these Big Juicy questions and they'll cut them into strips. So like they'll cut this into one strip, a little way into another strip. And then they'll put those in their book as bookmarkers. And then when they get to those sections of the book, they'll know that they've got the questions right there, or like right before their read aloud time, they'll read through the questions. And then they'll be able to have very natural conversations with their kids, bringing up the questions as they read. So those are just some strategies for you to use. Okay, the next page you're going to come to is the Our Week With planning page. This page is really great for walking you through the steps that you need to do your prep for the week. And once you get into the rhythm of doing this, it will start to go really quick. Right now, if you're just getting started and getting oriented to the guides, it can be a little bit different because you may be used to more scripted lessons, and that's not what this is. As an educator, you're making some choices here about what you're going to go over. So I'll come back to this, but I just wanted to hop one page forward, and this is the skills tracker. So every guide has a skills tracker. You only need to print one for the year, or even one for your child. If they're 8 and they're just starting the DART, you could print one. And then as the year goes by, you can start marking these off. So like I have one that I keep track of when we're creating a whole new year of DARTs. and I mark off what we go over each month to make sure that we're covering all the concepts. So as you are looking at your child's what they've done in previous starts, what they're doing in their original writing, you can start marking these off. Are they always capitalizing proper nouns? Then they've got it. They've got the check mark. If they don't always capitalize them, then you could say, like, we're still learning this. Like, it's not quite showing up all the time in their original writing. So I want to make sure that if it's covered in a DART, that we're going to go over it because they don't quite have it yet. And then you can also pick things that you're just saving for later. Like, we're just not ready for adjectives or adverbs yet. Let's skip those things and we'll come back around to them. We spin and spiral around so many concepts. So as you're working through this, you can see here, it says, read the week's passage. So that's your prep. Review the possible questions to ask any passage. So that's what I refer to in the guidelines, the stuff to ask any passage. Then read the what to know and how to teach sections. So in a minute, I'm going to skip forward to that for the week one. It says pick concepts you'll skip this week. So if your child already knows it, you don't need to go over it. If they got those proper nouns down, skip it. If it's too difficult, skip it. They're not ready for it. Or if you just have too many things to do this week and your language arts lesson needs to be a little more, focused and short, then you can also skip some things. We always come back around again and look at how different authors use things and introduce new concepts. You can choose 2 or 3 concepts to share or review, and then note a concept you learned. So this is an acknowledgement that, there may be things going on in language arts that you're sure you covered in 4th grade, but you don't remember. And now this is something that you're learning for either the first time or reviewing and having that come back to you. And then pick a copy work strategy, tons of copy work strategies in the guidelines. Prepare the passage for 1 dictation practice if desired. So we have French style dictation, reverse dictation, and dictation. I'll show a little bit about those when we get into the DART. Plan copywork hygge. So, candles, treats, colored pens, go to the coffee shop. We have a whole list of how to enchant copywork in the guidelines, so you can refer to that. Read the spotlight. For the first 3 weeks, we have a spotlight that spotlights either grammar or punctuation. So you want to read through that, decide what you're going to, when you're going to do that. And there's always an activity that goes with those. And then select 1 to 2 big juicy questions to discuss. So once you get going on this, you'll just be able to tick down this list and it's going to become really easy for you. So let's start. So here's the spin and spiral. If you do want to review it, this is kind of the major concepts that we do go over, and you can review that. And we also have notes. So in this case, it tells you what I told you earlier about how the Heartwood Hotel series, and this is the 3rd book, and we have darts for the other ones. Also, there'll be content notes here if there's something we just kind of think families should be aware of or parents should be aware of. Then there's the cultural context box. So if you are doing, this is just kind of great content for you to read over so that you can bring things up in the course of your read aloud. This is also great fodder for expanding something out to unit studies, or if you want to tie your project, like your partnership writing project, to the book, there's some great things here that you could tap into to kind of expand it, to bring in that theme or that information for a project. Just giving you a little bit more information for you to contextualize the book. All right, so now we get to week 1. So we talked about you reading over the passage, thinking about things. When you're reading it over, you can think about things your child has already been exposed to, things that might be interesting to them, language that stands out to you. And then we also have the why this passage, just to give you a little information about why we found the passage interesting and selected it. We do have these really great meetings with the writers and really go into some fun conversations about the passages we choose and what and how they can engage kids. I have a rule that the first order of business, if there are a few passages we're looking at as potential passages, always the ones with the most exciting wordplay and the fun concepts that we want to share, and then, we'll find that semicolon or that colon or that concept that we need to cover at some point. But we want to try to emphasize language play and interesting concepts so that kids, that's going to grab their attention. All right. So the what to note section is really a guide to help you have those initial stuff to ask conversations. So here we're giving you some tips about copy work and adapting it if it's a long passage, or we're giving you some heads up about, capital letters, or there's a number of commas in this passage and here's what they're doing. These are just really brief notes to inspire you to have those conversations with your kids. Not everything on this page needs to be covered or taught. They are more like conversation starters, little heads up for what you can discuss with your kids when you're just introducing the passage. They are literally just notes for you. And your kids never need to see this page if you don't want them to. You could just read through it, internalize the language, and then just naturally bring these things up when you're first introducing the passage with your kids. We also give notes in here about, like if you want your kids to maybe highlight all the B's when you're talking about alliteration and things like that. So one thing people do is they'll go through and they'll just make little check marks, like check marks next to the things that they want to bring up with their kids. The next page is the highlight for this week, which on the DART level, it's copy work. You can do copy work every week if you want to. If your kids enjoy copy work, that's great. If they're not super keen on copy work, then maybe they just want to do copy work 1 week out of the 4, and then they want to just kind of study the passage and talk about the passage. So you don't have to do copy work every week, but this is kind of the week 1 highlight to kind of train you as a parent to focus on that. And then spelling in the DART is very organic as well. It's just like a word discussion talking about, so we highlight some words and then we give you a little box for like how to approach talking about spelling for that word. How many of those things should we choose? It doesn't matter. The what to note can shift. It can be just like here we've got 2, 4, 6, 7 concepts. It could just be 4 or 5 concepts. It's really up to you to decide how many you want to cover, which ones you think are important for your kids. Maybe your kids, they put periods at the end of every sentence, so you don't really need to highlight the periods at all. Maybe you just talked about italics last month, and so you'll point out there's an italicized word in the passage, but you don't need to, make a big deal about it. So it really, maybe your kids just have, like, it's their first time learning about idioms. So you might talk a little bit more about idioms. So it's really up to you, and based on what your kids are trying to master, what they have mastered, and how much time you have. So I talked about in the planning session that you can, make some calls, just like in the what to note section, the how to teach section as well. So there's a section here about buzz and onomatopoeia. And there's a colon in this passage. You'll find it in the DART usually, like when we find a colon. It's very exciting because colons are not a common punctuation mark in lower middle grade fiction, for younger kids. So we talk about the colon here. And then there's a spotlight on proper nouns. So you'll notice that in the notes section, there are some things like we talk about capital letters, and those are going to relate to proper nouns. So there might be some things that we cover in both places where the note is just kind of an introduction, like, hey, here's a heads up. And then the how to teach goes into much more detail about it. So do you need to cover all of this? Nope. Like I said, if your kids got proper nouns down, then you can skip the spotlight that week. If you want to go over it as a review, you can do that. And then there's always a spotlight activity. So in this case, we are going on, like a proper noun hunt, looking at the characters, the places, the events, and then the other ways that proper nouns show up in the book. So sometimes an activity will be something that doesn't happen all at once, but over time, then you can start kind of hunting and accumulating some of these things. So that sums up a week of planning. So it's really, really straightforward. You just read your passage, go over that with your kids, pick what you want to note, And then you figure out the days that you're going to implement the things that you're going to go into more depth in and teaching. We talked a little bit when I talked about setting up your pages about questions. So the big juicy questions are really meant to be talked about along the way, so you can read those and be familiar with them and do that. There are also occasionally little try it boxes. We have like at least two to three in each one. So those are just in addition to the content. So in this case, in week 2, there's a whole thing about signs and flyers because the passage has this great little sign, and there's it's in the book, but so we talk about title case and how signs are created. And so here there's a little try it where there are brainstorming ideas for more contests and games that could be part of the Hartwell Hotel festivities, and then they're creating their own little poster advertising it. All right, and then this is an example of French style dictation. So French style dictation is just simply where you take the passage and you just remove some words, mainly like spelling words or homophones, something you want your kid to work on. And then you give them the passage page, which is also at the end of the dart, and you read it like a regular dictation. And when you get to that word that's missing, your child writes it in. So it's a really great bridge to doing full dictation where they have a blank page and you read the passage and they're writing every word that they hear. So this is this wonderful way to really focus in on specific words that you are working on for spelling or otherwise. And then the other thing that's in the dart that's really helpful in week 4 is what we call reverse style dictation. And that is where we remove, you can see the capital letters removed at the beginning of the sentence. A lot of the punctuation is removed. Some other things are changed around. So we basically remove capitalization, punctuation, and then they go through and they can be the editor, and they can add those things in. They can capitalize words, they can add in quotation marks where they're needed, add in the commas, and then you discuss the things that they found that they edited, and then eventually they can check it against the passage to see which mistakes they found and which ones that they missed. And then we have a correction sheet here for you. The literary device is typically something that you can do at the end of the book, but there are some literary devices that you may want to do at the beginning so that they heighten awareness, and then you can make notes of that all along. And then each literary device has a writing activity. And this is just a short writing activity. It's not meant to be edited. It's just kind of, it's like a supersized try it, really. It's just meant for fun. All right, and there's the big juicy questions. And then there's the book club party ideas section. This is really something that I've heard over and over that people skip it because they don't have a book club. But what I encourage people to do is look through this section. There are food ideas. There's decorating ideas on the first page. There are food ideas that are directly related to the book. They might be foods that are mentioned in the book, or they might be foods that are, like somehow related. Like for Fahrenheit 451, there weren't a whole lot of foods mentioned in the book, but we did kind of like fire related food, stuff that was red and orange and yellow and thematic. So you can take some of these ideas. There's activities that include like games and craft ideas, and you can use them throughout the month. So even if you don't have a book club, even if your family doesn't necessarily put on like a big celebration at the end of the month, which I recommend doing at least once or twice a year because they are truly just so much fun, and your kids will love to get involved in this. But if you don't do that, you can still use these ideas to just sprinkle them throughout the month. So you might have a dinner that is book related one night. You might have snacks one day that are book related, and they can munch on those while you're doing the read aloud or something like that. I'm so glad to see that some of you are saying that you love the book party ideas. That's great. Yeah, having the kids plan it. I'm telling you, do not take it on as one more thing for you to do. Have your kids plan it. They will love it. Give them some control. And then at the back, there are these passage pages that we have set out for you that you can easily use. In the Arrow Boomerang, we do not do French style dictation or reverse dictation passages for you right now. One of the reasons is that we want you to be able to kind of, like make your own if you want to. But this cool feature in PDFs now, you can copy the passage, copy the text, go put that in Word or go put that in Google Docs, and then you can paste it in, just kind of like fiddle with the formatting because the formatting in the PDF will be a little different. And then you can just easily make those passages. You go through, take out some words, put blanks in there, remove all of the punctuation you want to remove, capital letters, and then you can just print those passages. So we aren't part of a book club. We have friends have read the book around the same time and have a party with them. Yeah. And you know what? We've even had people who said they have like a bunch of friends. Their kids are in sports and have friends, or they have neighborhood friends, and they invite people to their party who haven't even read the book. It's such a fantastic opportunity for kids to share about the book. They're actually narrating to their friends about the book and telling them like why they have some game they're playing or some craft or some food, and they're telling everybody about the book and sharing and getting other people engaged. It's such a fantastic idea. I just love the idea of just like, oh yeah, you haven't read the book, that's okay, just come party with us. We like to eat and play games together. And then kids get an opportunity to share. So that's another fantastic way to draw more people in and create community around books. And then other kids may get interested and start reading, and then you'll get to share. Let's see, is there a recommended pace for doing Dart, Arrow, etc. at the same time as partnership writing? So if you're first starting out and you haven't, let's switch over to partnership writing. If you are just doing your very first start or your very first partnership writing project, what you might do is just focus on the Dart for 1 or 2 months until you really get into a rhythm with it and you feel comfortable. Then you can add in, like weave in a partnership project or just do a partnership project. When you start to get comfortable with those, then you can blend the two together. So that's what we're doing today. I'm going to share with you a partnership project and some tools that we have in partnership writing to help you do just that and weave these together. So I was thinking about the book. There's lots of like planning, like party, festival. It's a hotel setting, and the literary device guide is setting. So I was thinking about like hotels and party planning and things like that. And there is a project in partnership writing, and it is the mail order catalog. Now, I know I'm old and I grew up with mail order catalogs, but I still get catalogs, and you can order them from like seed companies or like tools places. Like we have a place here locally or in Canada called Lee Valley, and they put out this amazing catalog. There's clothing stores still like LL Bean and stuff that have catalogs. So if you wanted to introduce your child to this idea of a catalog, you could actually go on and like order some catalogs. Seed companies have these great catalogs that have awesome descriptions of the plants, which are very cool. So I thought the mail order catalog would be kind of cool to do alongside this book with that theme. So there are some tools. I'm going to skip around a little bit, but I'll tell you where I'm going. This is all inside partnership writing. In partnership writing, each project has what we call a week in focus. They are at the end. So let me skip down. Mail order catalog week in focus. So this is a really great planner for you. And it helps you to pull together what we just did for the Dart, because you can use this daily, Monday through Friday plus the weekend planner on this side to kind of write what you're going to do for the Dart in there if you don't have, a separate lesson planner. And then you can add in and weave in the pieces of the project from partnership writing that you're going to do. On top of that, you can also add anything you want to do for the Brave Writer lifestyle. So we have a list there of poetry tea time and movies and nature and art and music. So maybe this month, if you're doing the Heartwood Hotel, which is very nature-based, you're just going to focus on nature study and wordplay, because you're going to have some fun wordplay with making up the types of contests that you're going to do in the try it for the dart. So you can really start, once you plan your dart, if you use that as a theme, then you can start to generate ideas. The cultural context box comes in really helpful and handy here. The book club party ideas also can be pulled into this. So you can start to plan. And remember, with the Brave Writer lifestyle, you don't have to do everything. Even if you do it once a month or once a quarter, then it is something that is adding that rich language arts piece to your homeschool. Okay, then the writing project, like the steps for the writing project are right here. So they're in the project and we'll go over that, but we also have them lined out here for you to help you plan. And then the tracker shows you what are the base writing skills that are being developed by doing this project. And we give you a skills word bank. So if you need to write a narrative or some sort of report about what your kids are doing to give to an assessor or something, we have all that here for you. And then we have these specific writing skills that are specific to the project as well. One thing I would encourage you to do is that even if your kids peter out, like say they start this writing project and they don't finish it, sometimes it can be kind of a letdown. You feel like, oh, we're not doing enough. My kids didn't finish it. They didn't get through the publish stage. Use the skill tracker to acknowledge what they did and how their skills were able to grow in the attempt. So this is a really important piece of that, to be able to acknowledge, wow, you know what? They read about an item. They took some notes, or I helped them take notes about it. Like they did these research things. They did a little bit of free writing, and maybe they didn't finish it all and we didn't actually get to the end, but these are the things that they did. So this gives you a really good sense of the kinds of skills that are being developed in the project. So now let me go back to the project. I have on page 92. So the mail order catalog is this really fun and dynamic project that you can do with more than one child. So even if you have a kid that's at the arrow age or one that's down at the quill age, if you're doing this project, you really can pull them into this. So we talk about this idea of when you have lots of kids, you can meet them in the middle. And the partnership projects, or really any project, allows for that. So as you are looking at planning this out, maybe think about doing it if you have multiple kids and pulling them in to do some of these little bits of writing that go to creating the catalog. I'll show you really quick just because it's nice. You'll see in the pictures, there are some examples here of what this might look like. So you'll notice that as a writing format, we're looking at really small chunks of writing. This is really great for the partnership stage because they don't have to worry about transitions and things like that. The project becomes the format. So they are doing little bits of writing, they're organizing it, and then the actual book itself and each page becomes the format for them to pull a thematic piece of writing all together. So it's broken down into your description, your objective, your process, your project. You just want to read through all this just to get an overview of how it's going to work. And then you've got your weekly breakdown. So for this week, if you're planning and you've got your planner page with your weekend focus, and notice there are 1 through 4 at the top here. So you can just circle week 1. And then you can start looking at like, okay, what are we going to do? We're going to pick a theme. In this project, it talks about picking like an historical period. You could certainly do that. Or you can do what I said, like you can take a theme of like parties or spring events or something like that. And you start to talk about like, well, what types of things do people have during this time period? Or what types of things do we need? Like what's at a party store? Like if we were to create like a Heartwood Hotel party catalog, what kinds of objects would be in this store? And so your first step is to set aside some time for some brainstorming and some ideas. Then your kids can start to take some of those things and draw them. It's really nice to have the physical object there if you can. If not, you can watch videos of it or something to give them a sense of what it's all about so that they can have basically you're drumming up a lot of language for them to then do their free writing. And now remember, this is partnership writing. So you're going to partner with them. If they start writing and they get tired and start to peter out and they're, flopping around, and you can pick up and you can start to jot down for them. So they're telling you how they want to describe this item, and then you are doing the writing for them. So you're going to set aside some time. So this is 1 to 2 weeks here that you are picking a theme with your kids, picking items, really gathering together all these items that you might want to put in a catalog, starting to do the drawing, starting to do the free writing about each item. And there's some sample pages. And then in week 3, you're going to do the layout and pull some of that together. And then in week 4, you're assembling everything. So for this week's planning, you could just do that initial stage of like, what do we need to do in week 1? Where's the tracker page for the mailing catalog? At the very back of partnership writing. So if we jump to, you see I'm on page 97 right now. And these were added later. We created these to help people with the planning. So that's the tracker. And then here's the planner. So if for some reason you have an old PDF of partnership writing and you don't have these planners and trackers, just write to help@bravewriter.com and Diana can get these to you. Found it. Awesome. Okay. So you'll want to print 4 of these, 1 for each week of the month. And this is how you can integrate all that. Now you'll notice that I talked about a couple things when we talked about the week 1 drawing or free writing. So in week 1, there's drawing and free writing. There are 2 practices in Growing Brave Writers that will support you here. Yes, Building Confidence also has trackers at the end. Okay, so in Growing Brave Writers, this is where really see Growing Brave Writers. You can certainly work through it as a curriculum all on its own. Start at the beginning, work through the whole thing. But it's designed for you to revisit those practices and use them again and again. So in this case, having the item on hand can be really helpful. There's an activity, there's something called keen observation is what I'm getting at. So the keen observation activity is wonderful for giving your kids all kinds of descriptive language, because they are going to go through, and the activity calls for them to activate all of their senses around these objects. So you have an object and you have this sheet here and you're looking at sight, sound, touch, taste, smell, and any additional observations. And it is filled with questions that you can ask. So you can walk them through and ask all these different questions to start to get them to look at things from different angles and in different lighting, and how lighting reflects off of it, or if it looks fluid, or however the colors change. We have all kinds of questions here for you to ask to kind of drum up some of that language. One of the things when we ask kids to start free writing, one of the things that stumps them is that they don't have the words yet. They need to be kind of filled up with language, and then they can bring the words out onto the page. So this gives all kinds of questions for you to be able to not grill them, but just inspire them to look at things, to smell in different ways. And, like here we have, does it feel warmed or chilled? How strong is the scent coming from the item? Is it associated with the season of the year? Which one? Like if somebody's smelling a cinnamon stick, what does that smell like? Does it smell like spring? Or does it smell more like, winter and the holidays? So that gives them all this language to work with. All right. And then the other thing that I mentioned as part of the project is free writing. So we have, not only is it just that you're going to, set a timer and write, but we also have practices here for you to give different types of feedback. So we have different types of free writing And then we have different kinds of response styles that you can use to give feedback on the free writing, to encourage writing and the positive things that you see in their writing, and then encourage expansion and other things that they will get into later. So this is a really great chapter for you to read wherever, however you're using Growing Brave Writers, skipping to this chapter and going through some of these things and just putting them in your toolbox as an educator would be really, really helpful. All right. So I'm going to stop screen sharing. Okay, that felt like a massive run through planning. But I know some of you are veterans out there. You've kind of got it down and you just kind of want to be here to kind of plan alongside us as we go. And then for those of you who are brand new and haven't done anything yet, I hope it gave you some insight into how you can go about planning, what you can use, and how you don't have to do everything all at once in every guide. The dart, the arrow, the boomerang, they are geared toward age ranges. So 8 to 10, the difference between an 8-year-old just starting their writing journey, a 10-year-old who's, 2, 3 years farther along, that's going to be big. So you can pick and choose whatever it is your child needs from the dart, from the arrow, from the boomerang, and then go from there. All right. I'm going to take some questions if you have any. Says, I think my question involves advice on the next steps. I wrote a free writing prompt for my 13-year-old that said, explain the properties of language, viewpoint, and effectiveness in hooking the reader. We discussed this a lot using the articles I gathered about Y2K. However, her written response was just copying a couple titles and naming if they were serious or emotional. Should we try another free write or should we try to lower low stakes revision? She did not ask to type next time. We used a 5-minute timer. Yeah, that is explain the properties of language, viewpoint, and effectiveness in hooking the reader. What I might recommend is to tease that out a little bit. One thing, use the topic funnel like your own, maybe for your own prompts, using the topic funnel in Growing Brave Writers. Are you familiar with the topic funnel? Let me see if I can find it here real quick. It is in one of the revision chapters. I just can't remember which one it is. I'll have to screen share again when I find it. But one of the things that happens is that prompts can be really broad. So if she's having trouble with a prompt and writing enough, one of our inclinations can be to make a writing prompt cover a lot. So we feel like we're giving them lots to write about, but it's a little bit paralyzing because what happens is like there's a lot going on there. So like, what do I even write about? So let me screen share real quick and that we can talk a little bit about the topic funnel. So this is the topic funnel in Growing Brave Writers. It's on page 138. And it shows how, like, say you're going to, I mean, sometimes we give these really broad topics, like write an essay about sports. Okay, well, let's narrow that down a bit. Sports could be anything. So you could write an essay on like the mechanics of throwing a water polo ball. So like narrowing it from like soccer to football and climbing. Okay, of those three, what seems more interesting? Soccer and climbing. And then of those two, which one? Okay, climbing. All right, now climbing has all kinds of things you could write about. You could write about freestyle rock climbing versus climbing with ropes. You can talk about when they do, like the patterns on the climbing wall. I don't know enough about it to know, but there are some really, I mean, you could do a whole essay just on like the evolution of carabiners. I have a very, very good friend here locally, and he was showing me this super old carabiner from when, he's in his 70s and he was this rock climber extraordinaire when he was younger, and he has this old carabiner on his keychain. And it made me think about like, what is the evolution of carabiners? So all of this to say, is that if you're not getting a lot of language from her, what you might do is narrow the focus of your prompt, just feel out a little bit like what's most interesting to her. So in hooking readers, if you're talking about hooks, you could ask her, just talking about it, like, which do you think is more interesting, like viewpoint or language? Like, what did you maybe go over and do the thing where you're pulling from the shelf and you're looking at, take 10 books, read the hooks for each book, and then ask her, which hook made you want to keep reading? Okay, why did it? Like, let's rank them. Like top 10. Which one is the most effective hook for you? Next, next, next. Okay, these top five, why were they effective? Like, what about those hooks made them interesting? Then you're really giving her like a super focus, and then she might say, "Oh, I think the opening hook of Scythe was like the best one ever." Just write about that. What was going on in that hook that made it interesting to you? Then you've really narrowed it down for her. So, yep, just keep that language flowing. And then also, she's 13, but you could also do some jot it down for her. I did that for my son for many years, just kind of getting those thoughts on the page and giving him something to work with, and then for him to expand and revise. So that's another tactic that you can use. Is the Growing Brave Writers the spine for language arts or the foundation? I have partnership writing. How is Growing Brave Writers similar or different? Do you recommend it? Yes. Growing Brave Writers will give you the practices that you will use in the partnership writing projects. So you're going to learn about, like I shared, keen observation, free writing. It goes over all kinds of different ways to do revision and to help your child expand their writing. And then it also goes over practices for doing those final edits, to bring something to the place of like production and finalizing a piece of writing. So Growing Brave Writers really is like that foundational spine of all of the practices that we use to help original writing come to be. Okay, how many of you did your planning while we were on? I would love to know if you were able to get some planning done. Would you do this for 8-year-olds as well as the editing? It really depends on your 8-year-old. I would continue to, obviously 8 is when we recommend introducing free writing if they have pretty good facility with the pen. So if he or she is willing to put pen to page and can do some of that writing, even for just 2 or 3 minutes, then you can start that. But the practices in Growing Brave Writers, we definitely recommend starting around 8 years old. So this is the perfect time to do that and integrate those in as you're working through the DART and partnership project. Would love an idea of how much time to spend on this every day. I realize it varies greatly for each family and each child. However, any suggestion for the amount of time? My daughter notes that I spend too much time on language arts and never want to leave it. True. You're not alone. Could easily spend 2 hours each day. She's 13 and trying to still incorporate Boomerang, Building Confidence Project, Brave Writer Lifestyle. You know what? Like in terms of she's 13, she's Boomerang, she's doing high school, high school level upper middle school into high school level work. So like an hour of language arts is pretty standard, but she really probably doesn't need to spend that much time. We do write the Boomerang toward the teen. We recommend parents, of course, read the book along with their teen so that they can have these wonderful conversations. But if she's spending 45 minutes on language arts, and then here's another thing to think about, is that if she's also doing science and history and other subjects that require writing and reading, that all, the practices in Growing Brave Writers and the projects in Building Confidence can even have a lot of crossover with that. So for instance, like the Building Confidence project, the natural disasters report. My son wasn't really all that interested in natural disasters. So he did a bunch of research on how animals react to natural disasters. Then he lost interest. and said, I don't really want to do this. And I said, well, tell me what you learned. So after like 3 weeks of research, he basically gave me an oral report of everything he learned about how animals react and can like predict natural disasters. So of course I'm like, okay, the purpose of the project is to do a report. He basically gave me an oral report. So sure, we're gonna like give you credit for that. But is there anything else? I'm thinking report means that he's researching something, pulling together a report. I said, is there any other topic that you would want to do a report on? And he said, well, I'm really interested in the evolution of firearms. So even though the Building Confidence project was about natural disasters, the idea was to do a report. So I said, go for it. So he's over here in history doing this evolution of firearms research and doing the Building Confidence project. So there's a lot of crossover there. So start to maybe think about in those terms, what is she doing in other subjects that can be pulled in and woven together with English language arts? So boomerangs, we have all kinds of boomerangs that are historical fiction. We even have some boomerangs. I'm trying to think of them right now. Oh, like well, we have a slingshot, which she could do, but we have a slingshot for braiding sweetgrass. So braiding sweetgrass, amazing science crossover. So look for places where you can do some of that integration, and then you're taking those practices. You're taking the Brave Writer lifestyle piece, like movies or poetry tea time or some other element there, and you're pulling it all together and weaving it in. So let me know if that helps with that. Brave Writer is so different. We are unique, and it takes a little bit, I think, to get your mind kind of wrapped around how to pull everything together, because we're not scripted, and we want to give you the control to meet your child where they are and grow as an educator. So I'm so glad. Thank you. This was fun. I bought Building Confidence, and I was listening, and awesome. Exactly what I was looking for and didn't know it. Perfect. I'm so, so happy. That's great. I mean, writing is across the curriculum. In Growing Brave Writers, we actually have a section in the back that talks about writing across the curriculum. You don't have to isolate language arts. Really look at how it's drawn in from all the subjects. Okay, I really enjoyed having you all here, and I hope it was helpful. Once again, watch the replay if you need to. Come into either Brave Learner Home to ask any questions that you have, or write to us at help@bravewriter.com, and we have wonderful resources to share with you and can help you along with anything that you need. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.